She survived the battlefield fighting for her country. But inside her own city, racist cops treated her like a criminal. What happened next shocked the entire nation. The rain had barely stopped when she stepped out of the small corner store. Her military jacket still neatly pressed, the medals on her chest glinting faintly under the flickering streetlights. But instead of admiration, she was met with the cold, hateful stares of two police officers who had been circling the block. Like vultures. They didn't see a veteran, a woman who had once risked her life in distant deserts and foreign lands for the very freedoms they wore on their uniforms. No, all they saw was the color of her skin, and within minutes the situation escalated. Their voices rising, their accusations baseless, calling her suspicious simply because she clutched her grocery bag a little too tightly, as though protecting herself from their piercing glares. And when she spoke back calmly, firmly, with the dignity of someone who had led soldiers under fire, they laughed at her, mocking her service, dismissing her sacrifice as if it meant nothing, and before anyone could intervene they twisted her arms behind her back, handcuffing her so tightly she winced in pain, her cries echoing through the quiet street, a painful reminder that in the land she fought for, justice was often selective. And as neighbors peeked nervously from behind curtains, too afraid to step outside, the officers dragged her toward the squad car, one muttering under his breath that she should have stayed in her lane, while she lifted her head, eyes brimming, with tears but voice unshaken, whispering to herself that if she could survive war, she could survive this humiliation. Yet deep inside she knew this was not just an arrest, it was an assault on her dignity, on every promise she had been given as an American citizen, and little did those officers know. The next 30 minutes would bring a reckoning so powerful it would shake the walls of their precinct and expose the ugliness of their prejudice to the world. The station was buzzing with fluorescent lights and the stale smell of burnt coffee. When they shoved her inside, the handcuffs digging deeper into her wrists, her military jacket now wrinkled and damp from the rain, and yet, even in that moment of humiliation, she stood taller than the men around her, as if her spine was carved from steel forged on battlefields far away. But the officers saw only what they wanted, a target, someone to belittle, someone to strip of humanity, and so they jeered at her, laughing about how a war hero now sat in their custody like some common thief. And one of them leaned in close, his breath hot and sharp with arrogance, sneering, "Tell me, ma'am, was it worth it? Fighting for a country that doesn't give a damn about you?" While another scribbled lies onto a report sheet, manufacturing charges out of thin air, accusations of resisting arrest, threatening conduct, words so heavy and damning they could destroy her record, her reputation, her freedom, but she refused to break. She sat silently, staring straight ahead, her eyes burning with unspoken fire, remembering her comrades who had fallen beside her in uniform, remembering how she had sworn that no matter the enemy, she would never bow down, and yet here she was, surrounded not by foreign threats, but by her own countrymen in blue, men who had sworn an oath to protect but instead wielded their badges like weapons of hate. And as they processed her like a criminal, taking fingerprints, snapping photos, even taunting her about how mugshots suit her better than medals, her heart ached not for herself but for every young black girl watching from the sidelines of life, learning too early that even heroism could not shield them from prejudice. And just when it seemed the night would drown her in despair, a ripple of tension moved through the air, first the sound of heavy boots outside, then the sudden slam of car doors, then voices, authoritative and unyielding, filling the lobby with a storm of command. And in the blink of an eye, the laughter of the officers died in their throats as the glass doors burst open, and a team of FBI agents swept inside. Like a tidal wave of justice, their jackets marked boldly with 3 letters that could silence any room. Their presence so sharp and commanding that the station itself seemed to shrink under their authority. And in that moment, every mocking word, every cruel laugh, every false charge written against her trembled on the edge of exposure. Because These agents had not come for a courtesy visit. They had come for reckoning. And the truth they carried would turn the night upside down. The room froze as the FBI agents stormed forward, their polished boots thundering against the tiled floor, their eyes sharp and unflinching as they scanned the chaos before them. And in that silence, the officers who only moments ago had laughed so loudly now shrank into the corners of their own station, their arrogance crumbling like glass underfoot, because the agents were not here by accident. They carried files, thick folders, and a trail of recorded complaints that painted a picture darker than any of those officers dared admit, a history of targeted arrests, falsified reports, and racially charged misconduct that had been whispered about for months, but never confronted until now. And at the center of it all sat the woman they had tried to break, her hands still bound but her presence radiating a quiet defiance that drew the agent's attention immediately. One agent, a tall man with a calm but thunderous voice, stepped forward, holding out his badge with an authority that silenced the room, declaring, "This woman is under federal protection now." And with those words, the fragile illusion of power that the cops had clung to shattered completely, but they tried to recover, stumbling through excuses, claiming she resisted, that she posed a threat, their words dripping with desperation rather than confidence, and yet every lie they spoke only tightened the noose around their own careers. Because the agents had come prepared, body cam footage already confiscated, eyewitness accounts already collected, and a federal warrant in hand that did not just question the night's arrest, but reached back months, even years, into a pattern of corruption that stained the very walls of the station. And as the agents moved closer, one unlocking her cuffs with a gentle precision that contrasted so painfully with the brutality she had endured, the woman felt a rush of air fill her lungs, as if she was breathing freedom again. Yet her chest was heavy too, because she knew what this meant. Her suffering tonight was not hers alone. It was proof, evidence, fuel for something larger. And while the officers squirmed under the fluorescent lights, sweating and silent, the lead agent turned his gaze to the captain, who had pretended ignorance for too long, saying coldly, "You've built this place on intimidation and fear, but tonight it ends." And those words echoed like a verdict long overdue, a verdict that promised justice not just for her, but for everyone who had been silenced before her. And in that charged moment, as tension twisted through the air like a storm about to break, the woman sat taller, her wrists free, her dignity intact, knowing that the next steps would decide not only her fate, but perhaps the future of countless others who had walked through these same doors with hope and left in chains. The air inside the precinct was suffocating, every heartbeat pounding like a drum as the FBI agents spread out, their presence dismantling the false authority that had ruled these walls for years. And the officers who once strutted with unchecked arrogance now stood like children caught in a lie too heavy to defend, their eyes darting, their voices faltering. But the lead agent, his voice steady and cold as steel, began reading aloud from the warrant, listing names, dates, and cases that reeked of corruption. Black teenagers wrongfully jailed, veterans harassed and dishonored, single mothers arrested on fabricated charges. And with every name he spoke, the walls seemed to echo with the cries of those who had been silenced, until the weight of truth was too heavy for even the captain to carry. His jaw trembling, his face drained of color as he realized this night was no longer about one woman, but about an entire system being dragged into the light. And there she sat, the veteran they had tried to destroy, now standing as the living embodiment of resilience, her presence a mirror forcing them to face their ugliness. And when the agent turned to her, asking softly if she wanted to press charges, her eyes welled with tears, not of weakness but of strength, for she understood the gravity of this moment. The chance to make sure no other black woman, no other veteran, no other innocent soul would have to endure what she had endured. And with her voice steady though her heart raced, she answered, "Yes, every last one of them." And her words struck the room like a thunderclap, erasing the last shred of bravado from the officers' faces, some lowering their heads in shame while others stared blankly as handcuffs gold. Unforgiving steel clicked onto their wrists, the same steel they had abused against others, and as they were lined up, their badges stripped, their power gone, the veteran felt a strange silence settle inside her, a silence filled with justice, grief, and triumph all at once, because she knew her battle was not over, but tonight was proof that truth could prevail. And as the agents led the disgraced officers away, the entire station trembling under the weight of its reckoning, she stepped outside into the cool night air. The rain having finally cleared, the stars breaking through the clouds, and with her head held high she whispered to herself and to the unseen faces of every person wrong before her, "They tried to break me, but instead we broke them." And in that moment, the story was no longer hers alone. It belonged to a nation waking up, a nation forced to look at itself in the mirror. And though scars would remain, her courage had carved a path for others to follow, a reminder that dignity, once stolen, could always be reclaimed.